These Happy Golden Years, Chapter 20, Nellie Olson. I got my dishwasher unloaded. I'll wait for some folks to come in. I got my dishwasher unloaded and partially loaded. I got a load of wash on. I've had my shower, which I had before the last live stream. I can't believe I've got almost as many stars I need for a quilt. I am going to check the book though. Just let my hair shake it out so it'll dry some more. Oh my goodness. Oof. Alrighty. Okay. How's it going? Game Queen. Okay, don't worry, honey. You can always watch the replay, right? All right. These Happy Golden Years. Nellie Olson. Sorry, I got to clean my glasses. I have a smudge on my bifocal. Oh no, Nellie. Yeah. Here comes Nellie. Chapter 20, Nellie Olson. I declare, Ma said, it never rains but it pours. For strangely enough, Tuesday evening, a young man who lived on a neighboring claim came by and asked Laura to go buggy riding with him next Sunday. On Thursday evening, another young neighbor asked her to go buggy riding with him next Sunday. And as she was walking home Saturday, a third young man overtook her and brought her home in his lumber wagon, and he asked her to go riding with him the next day. That Sunday, Almanzo and Laura drove north past Almanzo's two claims to Spirit Lake. There was a small claim shanty on Almanzo's homestead. On his tree claim, there were no buildings at all, but the young trees were growing well. He had set them out carefully and must cultivate and care for them for 5 years. Then he could prove up on the claim and own the land. The trees were thriving much better than he had expected at first, for he said that if trees would grow on those prairies, he thought they would have grown naturally before now. These government experts have got it all planned, he explained to Laura. They're going to cover these prairies with trees all the way from Canada to Indian Territory. It's all mapped out in the land offices where the trees ought to be, and you can't get that land except on tree claims. They're certainly right about one thing. If half these trees live, they'll seed the whole land and turn it into forest land like the woods back east. Do you think so? Laura asked him in amazement. Somehow she could not imagine those prairies turned into woods like Wisconsin. Hey, Willows. Hi, Kathy. Well, time will show, he answered. Anyway, I'm doing my part. I'll keep those trees alive if it can be done. Spirit Lake was beautiful and wild. There, Almanzo drove along a rocky shore where the water was deep and the waves ran foaming before the wind and dashed high on the rocks. There was an Indian mound by Spirit Lake, too. It was said to be a burial place, though no one knew what was in it. Excuse me. Tall cottonwoods grew there and choke cherries smothered in wild grapevines. On the way back, they came into town past the Olsons' claim. It was on the section line a mile east of Almanzo's homestead. Laura had not seen Nellie Olson's home before, and she felt a little sorry for her. The shanty was so small, standing among the wild grass in the wind. Mr. Olson had no horses, only a yoke of oxen, and the place was not improved as Pa's was. But Laura barely glanced at it, for she did not want... Oh, excuse me. Well, now I thought I plugged my lamp thing back in. Huh. Oh, well. But Laura barely glanced at it, for she did not want to spoil the beautiful day by thinking of Nellie Olson. Oh my God, folks. Goodbye then till next Sunday, Almanzo said as he left her at the door. The whole country seemed different to her now that she had seen Lakes Henry and Thompson, and Spirit Lake with its strange Indian mound. She wondered what next Sunday would show. Sunday afternoon, as she watched the buggy coming across the big slough, she saw, to her surprise, that someone was with Almanzo. Where did it go? She wondered who it could be, and if perhaps he did not intend to go for a drive that day. When the horses stopped at the door, she saw that Nellie Olson was with him. Without waiting for him to speak, Nellie cried, "Come on, Laura, come with us for a buggy ride." "Want some help, Wilder?" Pa asked, going toward the colts' heads, and Almanzo said he would be obliged. So Pa held the bridles while Almanzo waited to help Laura into the buggy. And in stupefied surprise, Laura led him. Nellie moved over to make room for her and helped her tuck her lap robe around her brown poplin. As they drove away, Nellie began to talk. She admired the buggy. She exclaimed over the colts. She praised Almanzo's driving. She gussed over Laura's clothes. "Oh," she said, "Laura, your poke bonnet is just utterly too." She never stopped for an answer. She did so want to see Lakes Henry and Thompson. She had heard so much about them. She thought the weather was just utterly too, and the country was nice. Of course, not as anything nice like New York State, but that couldn't really be expected out west, could it? Oh my gosh. "Why are you so quiet, Laura?" she asked without stopping, and went on with a giggle. "My tongue isn't made to lie still. My tongue is meant to go flippity-flop." Laura's head ached. Her ears rang with the continuous babble, and she was furious. Almanzo seemed to be enjoying the drive. At least he looked as though he were being amused. They drove to Lakes Henry and Thompson. They drove along the narrow tongue of land between them. Nellie thought the lakes were just utterly too. She liked lakes. She liked water. She liked trees and vines. And she just adored driving on Sunday afternoons. She thought it was just utterly too. The sun was rather low as they came back, and since Laura's house was nearest, they stopped there first. "I'll be along next Sunday," Almanzo said as he helped Laura out of the buggy, and before Laura could speak, Nellie chimed in, "Oh, yes, we will come by for you. Didn't you have a good time? Wasn't it fun?" "Till Sunday, then. Don't forget, we'll be by." "Goodbye, Laura, goodbye." Almanzo and Nellie drove away towards town. All that week, Laura debated with herself to go or not to go. It was no pleasure for her to go driving with Nellie. Gracie's dreaming. They say that 90% of dogs' dreams are about their family, their owners. "What are you doing, Gracie? You chasing rabbits?" All that week, Laura debated herself to go or not to go. So it was no pleasure. It was no pleasure for her to go driving with Nellie. On the other hand, if she refused to go, Nellie would be pleased, and that's what Nellie wanted. Trust Nellie to find some way to go driving with Almanzo every Sunday. "That's okay, sweetie." Laura made up her mind to go with them. Next Sunday, drive began much like the one before. Nellie's tongue went flippity-flop. She was in gay spirits, chattering and laughing to Almanzo, and almost ignoring Laura. She was sure of triumph, for she knew that Laura would not long endure this situation. "Oh, Manny, you have those wild colts so well broken. You handle them so wonderfully," she cooed, leaning against Almanzo's arm. Laura bent to tuck the dust robe more closely in at her feet, and as she straightened up again, she carelessly let the end of the robe flutter out over the prairie wind. The colts left the ground in one leap and ran. Nellie screamed and screamed, clutching at Almanzo's arm, which he very much needed to use just then. Laura quietly tucked down the end of the lap robe and sat on it. When it was no longer flapping behind them, the colts soon quieted and went on in their well-trained trot. "Oh, I was never so frightened. I was never so frightened in my life," Nellie chattered and gasped. "Horses are such wild things. Oh, Manny, why did they do it? Don't let them do it again." Almanzo looked sideways at Laura and said nothing. "Horses are all right if you understand them," Laura remarked, "but I suppose these are not like the horses in New York." "Oh, I would never understand these Western horses. New York horses are quiet," Nellie said, and then she started talking of New York. She talked as though she knew it well. Laura knew nothing of New York State, but she knew that Nellie did not either, and that Almanzo did. They were nearing the turn toward home when Laura said, "We're so near the Boasts. Don't you think it would be nice to go see them?" "If you like," Almanzo said. Instead of turning west, he drove straight on north across the railroad tracks and farther out across the prairie to Mr. Boast's homestead claim. Mr. and Mrs. Boast came out to the buggy. "Well, well, so the buggy carries three," Mr. Boast teased, his black eyes sparkling. "It's a wider seat than the cutter seat. The cutter was built for two." "Buggies are different," Laura told him. "They seem," Mr. Boast began, but Mrs. Boast interrupted. "Now, Rob," she exclaimed, "you better be asking the folks to get out and stay a while." "Thank you, Willow. Oh, that's lovely. I'll read another chapter for that. Thank you very much. You just got another chapter." We can't stay," said Laura. "We only stopped for a minute." "We're just out for a drive," Almanzo explained. "Then we will turn around here," Nellie said with authority. Laura spoke quickly. "Let's go a little further. I've never been over this road. Is there time to go a little further, Almanzo?" "It's a good straight road north," Mr. Boast said. His eyes laughed at Laura. She was sure he guessed what was in her mind, and her eyes laughed back at him as Almanzo started the colts and went north. Beyond Mr. Boast's claim, they crossed at the end of the slough that ran northeast from Silver Lake. Here a road turned toward town, but it was wet and boggy, as Laura had known it would be, so they kept driving north. "This is stupid. This isn't any fun. Call this a good road?" Nellie fretted. "It's good so far," Laura said quietly. "Well, we won't come this way again," Nellie snapped. Then quickly she recovered her happy vivacity, telling Almanzo how much she enjoyed driving just anywhere with such a good driver and fine team. Another road branched to the west, and Almanzo turned the team into it. Nellie's home was only a little way ahead. As Almanzo helped her from the buggy at her door, she clung to his hand a moment, saying how much she enjoyed the drive. "We'll go another way next Sunday, won't we, Manny?" "Oh, it's too bad I suggested going that way, Nellie, if you minded it so much," said Laura. And Almanzo only said goodbye and took his place by Laura. There was quietness between them for a little while as they drove toward town. Then Laura said, "I'm afraid I've made you late for your chores by wanting to take that road." "It doesn't matter," he reassured her. "The days and nights are as long as they ever were, and I don't have a cow." Again they were silent. Laura felt that she was dull company after Nellie's lively chatter, but she was determined that Almanzo would decide that. She would never try and hold him, but no other girl was going to edge her out little by little without his realizing it. At home again, as Almanzo and Laura stood beside the buggy, he said, "I suppose we'll go again next Sunday?" "We'll not all go," Laura answered. "If you want to take Nellie for a drive, do so. But don't come by for me. Good night." She went quietly into the house and shut the door. Sometimes when she went walking to school past the hollow that was growing greener with violets' leaves, then blue with their blossoms, Laura wondered if Almanzo would come next Sunday. Excuse me, I skipped a page. Oh, hang on a second. Sometimes, when her three little pupils were diligently studying, She looked up from her own studies and saw the cloud shadows moving over the sunny grass beyond the windows and wondered. If he didn't, he didn't, and that was all. And she could only wait until next Sunday. On Saturday, she walked to town and sewed all day for Miss Bell. Pa was breaking sod at home to make a larger wheat field, so Laura stopped at the post office to see if there was any mail. And there was a letter from Mary. She could hardly wait to get home to hear Ma read it, for it would tell when Mary was coming home. No one had written Mary about the new sitting room and the organ that was waiting for her there. Never had anyone in the family had such a big surprise as the organ would be for Mary. "Oh, Ma, a letter from Mary," she cried, bursting in. "I'll finish the supper, Ma. You go read it," said Carrie. So Ma took a hairpin from her hair as she carefully slit the envelope. She sat down to read the letter. She unfolded the sheet and began to read. It was as if all the light went out of the house. Carrie gave Laura a frightened look, and after a moment, Laura asked quietly, "What is it, Ma?" "Mary does not want to come home," Ma said, and then quickly, "I don't mean that. She asks if she may spend her vacation with Blanche at Blanche's home. Stir the potatoes, Carrie, or they'll be too brown." All through supper, they talked about it. Ma read the letter aloud. Mary wrote that Blanche's home was not far from Vinton, and she very much wanted that Mary should visit. Her mother was writing to Ma to invite Mary. Mary would like to go if Pa and Ma said she might. "I think she should," Ma said. "It will be a change for her and do her good." Pa said, well, so it was all settled. Mary was not to come home that year. Later, Ma said to Laura that Mary would be at home to stay when she finished college, and it might be that she would never have another opportunity to travel. It was nice that she could have this pleasant time and make so many new friends while she was young. She will have it to remember, said Ma. But that Saturday night, Laura felt nothing would ever be right again. Next morning, though the sun was shining and the meadowlarks singing, they did not mean anything as she rode to church in the wagon. She said to herself that she would ride in a wagon all the rest of her life. She was quite sure now that Almanzo would take Nellie Olson driving that day. Still at home, she did not take off her brown poplin, but put her big apron on as she had done before. Time went very slowly, but at last it was 2:00, and looking from the window, Laura saw the colts come dashing over the road from town. They trotted up and stopped at the door. "Would you like to go for a buggy ride?" Almanzo asked as Laura stood in the doorway, not dory. "Oh, yes," Laura answered. "I'll be ready in a minute." Her face looked at her from the mirror, all rosy and smiling, as she tied the blue ribbon bow under her left ear. In the buggy, she asked, "Wouldn't Nellie go?" "I don't know," Almanzo replied. After a pause, he said in disgust, "She's afraid of horses." Laura said nothing, and in a moment he continued, "I wouldn't have brought her the first time, but I overtook her walking in the road. She was walking all the way to town to see someone, but she said she'd rather go along with us. Sunday at her house are so long and lonely, I felt sorry for her, and she seemed to enjoy the drive so much. I didn't know you girls disliked each other." Laura was amazed that a man who knew so much about farming and horses could know so little about a girl like Nellie. But she only said, "No, you wouldn't know, because you didn't go to school with us. I will tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to take Ida driving." "We will sometime," Almanzo agreed, "but today is pretty fine just by ourselves." It was a beautiful afternoon. The sun was almost too warm, and Almanzo said the colts were so well broken now they could raise the buggy top. So together, each with a hand, they raised it and pressed the hinge of the braces straight to hold it up. Then they rode in its shade with the gentle wind blowing through the open sides. After that, nothing was ever said again about the next Sunday, but always at 2:00, Almanzo drove around the corner of Pearson's livery barn, and Laura was ready when he stopped at the door. "What's going on?" "For a double oven they couldn't install because nobody read the measurements." "Oh my God. They better give you your money back." It was a beautiful afternoon. Oh, okay. After that day, nothing was ever said about next Sunday, but always at 2 o'clock, Almanzo drove around the corner of Pearson's livery barn, and Laura was ready when he stopped at the door. Pa would look up from his paper and nod goodbye to her and then go on reading, and Ma would say, "Don't be out too late, Laura." June came and the wild prairie roses bloomed. Laura and Almanzo gathered them beside the road and filled the buggy with the fragrant blossoms. Then one Sunday at 2 o'clock, the corner of Pearson's barn remained empty. Laura could not imagine what might have happened, till suddenly the colts were at the door and Ida was in the buggy laughing merrily. Almanzo had gone by Reverend Brown's and persuaded Ida to come. Then, for a surprise, he crossed the big slough west of the town road. This brought them to Pa's land a little south of the house, and while Laura watched toward the north, they had come up from the opposite direction. They drove that day to Lake Henry, and it was the merriest of drives. The colts behaved beautifully. They stood quietly while Ida and Laura filled their arms with the wild roses and climbed back into the buggy. They nibbled at the bushes by the road while Almanzo and the girls watched the little waves ripple along the shores of the lakes on either hand. The road was so narrow and so low that Laura said, "I should think the water might be over the road sometimes." "Not since I've known it," Almanzo answered. But perhaps many years or ages ago, the two lakes were one. Then for a while they sat in silence, and Laura thought how wild and beautiful it must be when the twin lakes were one, when buffalo and antelope roamed the prairie around the great lake and came there to drink. Then wolves and coyotes and foxes lived on the banks, and wild geese, swans, herons, cranes, ducks, and gulls nested and fished and flew there in countless numbers. "Why did you sigh?" Almanzo said. "Did I?" Laura said. "I was thinking that the wild things leave when people come. I wish they wouldn't." "Most people kill them," he said. "I know," Laura said. "I can't understand why." It's called hunting. "It's beautiful here. But we are a long way from home, and I promised Elmer I'd go to church with him tonight." Almanzo tightened the reins and spoke to the colts while Laura asked, "Who's Elmer?" "He's a young man who has a claim near Father Brown's, and he boards at our place. He wanted me to go walking with him this afternoon, but I thought I'd rather go with you this once. You've never seen Elmer McConnell," she remembered to add. "There are so many new people, I can't keep track of even the ones I know," Laura said. "Mary Power is going with the new clerk in Ruth's bank," Ida told her. "But Cap," Laura exclaimed. "What about Cap Garland?" "Cap's smitten with a new girl who lives west of town," Almanzo told them. "Oh, I think it's a pity we don't all go in a crowd anymore," Laura lamented. "What fun the sleighing parties were, and now everyone's paired off." "Oh, well," Ida said. "In the spring, a young man's fancy lightly turns to thoughts of love." "Yes, or it's this," and Laura sang, "Oh, whistle and I'll come to you, my lad. Oh, whistle and I'll come to you, my lad. Though father and mother and should go mad. Oh, whistle and I'll come to you, my lad." "Would you?" Almanzo asked. "Of course not. It's only a song." "Better whistle for Nellie. She'd come," Ida teased, and then she said soberly, "But she's afraid of these horses. She says they aren't safe." Laura laughed delightedly. "They were a little wild the time she was with us," she said. "But I can't understand it. They're perfectly gentle," Ida insisted. Laura only smiled and tucked the dust robe in more securely, and then she saw Almanzo looking sideways at her behind Ida's head, and she let her eyes twinkle at him. She didn't care if he did know that she had frightened the colts to scare Nellie on purpose. All the miles home they rode talking and singing until they came to Laura's home, and as she left them, she asked, "Won't you come with us next Sunday, Ida?" Blushing, Ida answered, "I'd like to. But I think I'm going to go walking with Elmer. Chapter 20. And thank you to the tip from Willow's Garden. We're going to have another chapter. Chapter 21. Skip and Barnum. June was gone and Laura's school was out. The organ was paid for. Laura learned to play a few chords with Pa's fiddle, but she would rather listen to the fiddle alone, and after all, the organ was for Mary's enjoyment when Mary came home. One evening, Pa said, "Tomorrow's 4th of July. Do you girls want to go to the celebration in town?" "Oh, no, let's have it like it was last year," Carrie said. "I don't want to be in a crowd where they shoot off firecrackers. I'd rather have our own firecrackers at home." "I want lots of candy at home," Grace put in her vote. "I suppose Wilder will be around with that team and buggy?" Laura, Pa asked. "He didn't say anything about it," Laura answered, "but I don't want to go to the celebration anyway." "Is it unanimous, Caroline?" Pa wanted to know. "Why, yes, if you agree with the girls," Ma smiled at them all. "I'll plan a celebration dinner and the girls will help me cook it." All the next morning they were busy. They baked fresh bread, a pie plant pie. Do you know what pie plant is, folks? It's rhubarb. Took me years to figure that out. And a 2-egg, okay, they baked fresh bread, a pie plant pie, and a 2-egg cake. Laura went to the garden with her fingers and dug carefully into the hills of potatoes to find new potatoes. She gathered enough potatoes for dinner without injuring one plant by disturbing its roots. Then she picked the first of the green peas, carefully choosing only the plump pods. Ma finished frying a spring chicken while the new potatoes and the peas were cooked and given a cream dressing. The 4th of July dinner was just ready, all but steeping the tea when Pa came home from town. He brought lemons for lemonade, firecrackers for the evening, and candy for all the time after dinner. See, kids nowadays eat that shit every day. And when we were kids, okay, you want a candy, you shoveled snow and you earned money. The only time once in a blue moon, my father would pull out his wallet and he'd take out a dollar bill and he'd snap it to make sure it was single. And he'd give it to me. And he'd say, "Go down to the store and get 7 chocolate bars or 6 chocolate bars." There was 5 kids and mom and dad, so I'll say 7. And I brought him home 30 cents change. But those were treats. We got candy in our Christmas stockings. We got a cake on our birthday. Dessert was not a thing in my house when I was growing up. And in Howie's house, it was. Even if it was a couple of cookies on a plate, his father had to have dessert. So Howie and I have worked it out. So we won't really, maybe I'll make a dessert tonight. What's going on? Oh, well, you know what? If they didn't measure it properly, it's not your fault, honey. If it wasn't properly measured to fit and they can't install it, they can't expect you to pay for it. Right? Ma finished frying a spring chicken while the new potatoes and peas were cooked and given a cream dressing. The 4th of July dinner was just ready, all but the steeping tea when Pa came from town. He brought lemons for afternoon lemonade, firecrackers for the evening, and candy for all the time after dinner. As he gave the packages to Ma, he said to Laura, "I saw a Mounds Wilder in town. He and Cap Garland were hitching up a new team he's got. That young fellow missed his vocation. He ought to be a lion tamer. Those horses are wilder than hawks. It was all he and Cap could do to handle them. He said to tell you if you want to go for a buggy ride this afternoon, he'd be ready to climb in as he drives up, for he won't be able to get out and help you. He said to tell you there's another team to break." "I do believe he wants to break your neck," said Ma, and I hope he breaks his own first. This was so unlike Ma's gentle self that they all stared at her. Wilder will manage the horses, Caroline. Don't you worry, Pa said confidently. If I ever saw a born horseman, he's one. Do you really not want me to go, Ma? Laura asked. You must use your own judgment, Laura, Ma replied. Your Pa says it's safe, so it must be. After they had slowly enjoyed that delicious dinner, Ma told Laura to leave the dishes and go put on her poplin if she intended to go driving. I'll do up the work, Ma said. But you've worked all morning, Laura objected. I can do it and still have time to dress. Neither of you need to bother about the dishes, Carrie spoke up. I'll wash and Grace can wipe. Come on, Grace, you and I are older than Mary and Laura were when they did their work. So Laura was ready and waiting at the door when Almanzo came. She had never seen the horses before. One was a tall bay with a black mane and tail. The other was a large brown horse, spotted with white. On one side of his brown neck was a white spot that resembled a rooster. A streak of the white in the brown mane looked like the rooster's tail. See, I would have called that horse Cock Robin or something. Almanzo stopped this strange team, and Laura went toward the buggy, but the brown horse reared up, straight up on his hind legs, with front feet pawing the air, while the bay horse jumped ahead. Almanzo loosened the reins, and as the horse sprang away, he called, I'll be back. Laura waited while he drove around the house, and when he stopped the horses again, she went quickly to the buggy, but stepped back again as the spotted horse reared and the bay jumped. Pa and Ma were beside Laura. Carrie stood in the doorway clutching a dish towel, and Grace looked out beside her. They all waited while Almanzo drove around the house again. Ma said, You better not try and go, Laura. But Pa told her, Caroline, she will be all right. Wilder will handle them. This time, as Almanzo stopped the horses, he turned them a little, cramping the buggy to give Laura a better chance to get between the wheels. Quick, he said. Hoops and all, Laura moved quickly. Her right hand grasped the folded down braces of the buggy top. Her right foot touched the buggy step, and as the spotted horse reared and the bay horse leaped, her left foot stepped into the buggy and she dropped into the seat. Drat these hoops, she muttered, while she settled them inside the speeding buggy, covering her brown poplin with the dust robe. Don't touch the buggy top, Almanzo said, and they were silent. He was fully occupied in keeping control of the horses, and Laura made herself small on her side of the seat to keep out of the way of his straining arms as he tried to pull the horses down out of their run. They went north because they were headed that way, and as they streaked through town, Laura caught a glimpse of thickly scrambling crowd getting out of the way, and Cap Garland's grin as he waved his hand to her. Later, she thought with satisfaction that she had sewed the ribbon ties to her poke bonnet herself. She was sure the stitches would not give way. The horses settled into a fast trot, and Almanzo remarked, They said you wouldn't go, and Cap said you would. Did he bet I would? I didn't, if that's what you want to know. Almanzo answered, I wouldn't bet about a lady. Anyway, I wasn't sure how you'd like this circus I'm driving. What are the name of the colts? Laura inquired. What became of the colts? Laura inquired. I sold them. But Prince and Lady, Laura hesitated. I'm not criticizing these horses, but I wonder if anything's wrong with Prince and Lady. Nothing is wrong. Lady has a colt, and Prince doesn't drive so well without Lady. I had an offer of $300 for the colts. They were well matched. Well-broken team and worth it, but you can't be sure of a fair price every day. This team only cost me $200. That's a clear gain of $100, and I figure I can sell these for more than they cost me, if I want to, when they're broken. I think it'll be fun to break them, don't you? Oh, yes, Laura answered. We will teach them to be gentle. That's what I figured. By the way, the spotted one is named Barnum, and the bay is Skip. We won't go by the picnic grounds. The firecrackers would make them wild again. The horses went on mile after mile at a swift trot on the road across the open prairie. Rain had fallen the night before, and water stood in pools whenever the road dipped, but Barnum and Skip refused to get their feet wet. They jumped across every puddle, taking the buggy flying over it with them. Not a spatter fell on Laura's poke bonnet. The 4th of July sun was hot, and Laura wondered why Almanzo did not suggest raising the buggy top until he said, "I'm sorry, but if we raised the buggy top, these horses would be frantic. I don't know if I could hold them. Cap and I together couldn't hitch them to the buggy till we put the top down." So they rode in the sunshine with the prairie wind blowing and white clouds sailing the blue sky overhead. They drove to Spirit Lake, around the end of it and beyond, and by different roads they went home again. "We've driven 60 miles, Almanzo said, as they neared the house. "I think the horses will stand to let you out. I daren't get out to help you for fear they would leave me." "I can get out myself," Laura said. "Don't let the horses get away. But won't you stay for supper?" "I'd like to, but I must get the horses back to town before I stop them, so Cap can help me unhitch. Here we are. Don't jiggle the buggy top as you step down between the wheels." Laura tried not to, but she did jar it a little. Barnum reared, Skip leaped, and they dashed away. When Almanzo came next Sunday, Laura knew what to expect. She was quick to spring into the buggy the first time the horses stopped. They were headed east, and they ran that way. After a while, they went more quietly, and Almanzo drove them by a roundabout. But Almanzo drove them by a roundabout way to Twin Lakes. Rapidly, without rearing or plunging, they passed over the narrow road between the lakes, and on the homeward road they trotted. "I've been driving them some this week, and I guess they're beginning to get the idea that they might as well behave," Almanzo explained. "But they're not so much fun when they behave," Laura complained. "You think not? Well, then let's teach them what a buggy top is for. Catch hold." Barely in time to do her part, Laura caught the front brace at the side of the buggy top and lifted it as Almanzo lifted his side. Quickly, she pressed back on the hinge in its middle, straightening and clamping it as Almanzo did. The top was up and held firmly in place just in the nick of time. Skip sprang, and Laura caught her breath as Barnum reared. Up and up he went, 4 feet pawing the air, higher still. "Don't go away. I'm just going to answer the phone, all right? I'll be right back." Sorry about that. Howie was asking what I put 2 bags of macaroni on the grocery list because all we have is linguine and spaghetti and spaghettini. And I like a macaroni and cheese casserole once in a while, and I'm going to be making one. Ooh, I should make one for supper. No, not tonight. And he said, "What is macaroni?" And I said, "Have you had a stroke?" And he said, "I'm looking at the pasta. I don't see anything called macaroni." I said, "Howard, elbow macaroni." And he goes, "Well, now if you'd have said elbow." And I went, "Macaroni's always been called macaroni." So I'm going to keep my eye on him. That's odd. Anyway, we're back. Now, where was I? Skip sprang, and Laura caught her breath as Barnum reared. Up and up he went, 4 feet pawing the air, higher still, and his huge back rising in front of the dashboard. Nearer it came and nearer. In one more instant, it would topple backward upon the buggy. Then, with a great leap, Barnum came down far ahead, running with Skip. The buggy top swayed with the swiftness of its going, and fear of it increased their speed. Almanzo's arms were rigid as he held the reins that were taut and straight as wires. Laura shrank back in the corner of the seat, held her breath, and hoped they would not break. That's like, going to the back roads and spinning the tires, doing Press Your Girlfriend, right? Back in the day. Driving the back roads. I remember those days. God, I miss those days, At last the horses tired and slowed to a trot. Almanzo drew a deep breath and relaxed a little. "Was that better?" He smiled at Laura. Laura laughed shakily. Much better, so long as the harness holds together. The harnesses will hold. I had it made to order at Shobe's harness shop. Every strap is sound leather and it's double riveted and wax sealed. In time, these horses will learn the difference between running and running away. They were runaways, you know. Were they? Said Laura, and they laughed, still a little shaky. Yes, that's why I got them so cheap. They can run, but they can't run away from us. After a while, they'll learn that they can't, and they'll stop trying and be a good team. The buggy top is still up and still scaring them. How will we ever get it down? Laura wanted to know. We don't need to put it down. Just be careful not to shake it when you're getting out, and I'll leave it up. The dangerous instant in getting in or out of the buggy was the instant she was between the wheels. She had to be quicker than the horses and go between the wheels without getting caught. Then Almanzo stopped the horses at her door. Very carefully, Laura stood up, stooped under the buggy's top braces without touching them, and quickly she got to the ground. Her skirts swooshed as she went, and the horses jumped and were gone. She was surprised that her knees felt weak as she went into the house, and Pa turned and looked at her. Safely home again, he said. There isn't a bit of danger, Laura told him. No, of course not. But just the same, I shall feel better when those horses are quieter. I suppose you're going again next Sunday? I think so, Laura answered. Next Sunday, the horses were much quieter. They stood while Laura got into the buggy. Then they quickly started and trotted swiftly away. Almanzo drove them through town and northward. As the miles slipped behind them, their shining coats became dark with sweat. Almanzo gently tried to pull them back to a walk. Better slow down, boys. You'll be cooler if you do, he told them, but they refused to slacken their speed. Oh, well, if you want to go, it won't hurt you, he added. It's terribly warm, said Laura, raising the bangs from her forehead to let the wind blow underneath them. The heat of the sun was intense and strangely smothering. We can raise the top, Almanzo said, but doubtfully. Oh, no, let's don't, Laura objected. The poor things are warm enough without running away. Well, without running, she corrected herself. It is pretty warm to excite them so much, Almanzo agreed. It might not hurt them, but I'd rather not risk them, if you don't mind the sun. As time passed, the horses trotted more slowly. Still they would not walk, but trotted onward steadily until Laura suggested turning homeward earlier than usual because of the weather signs. The wind came in short, hot puffs from every direction, and thunderclouds were in the west. Almanzo agreed. It does look like rain. Turned toward home, the horses trotted more swiftly, but it was a long way to go. Ghostly whirlwinds sped invisible over the prairie, twisting the grass in small circles as they went, as if unseen fingers were stirring it. Dust devils, Almanzo remarked. Only there's no dust, nothing but grass. They say it's a sure sign of cyclone weather. The thunderheads piled up in the west, and the whole sky looked stormy. The sun was shooting angry red beams of light across the dark clouds when Laura came home. Almanzo hurried away to reach his claim and make things snug there before the rain fell. But the storm held off. Night came, black and oppressive, with still no rain. Laura slept uneasily. Suddenly she woke up in a glare of light. Ma stood beside the bed holding the lamp. She shook Laura's shoulder. Quick, Laura, she said. Get up and help Carrie get her clothes. Come, Pa says there's a bad storm coming. Laura and Carrie snatched up their clothes and followed Ma, who had snatched up Grace and her clothes and a blanket and was hurrying towards the open trap door of the cellar. Go down, girls. Quickly, hurry, she told them. They tumbled hastily down into the small cellar under the kitchen. Where's Pa? Laura asked. Ma blew out the lamp. He's outdoors watching the cloud. He can get here quickly now that we're all down out of his way. Why did you blow out the lamp, Ma? Grace almost whimpered. Get into your clothes as well as you can, girls, Ma said. We don't want the lamp, Grace. We don't want any risk of fire. They could hear the roaring wind, and a strange wild note was in it. Flashes of lightning glared into the darkness. The kitchen overhead was brighter than fire for an instant, then dark, was blacker, and seemed to press against your eyeballs. Press on the eyeballs. Ma dressed Grace while Laura and Carrie somehow got into their clothes. When they all sat down on the earth floor with their backs against the earth wall and waited. Laura knew they were safe in the cellar, but she could hardly bear the closed-in, underground feeling of it. She wanted to be out in the wind with Pa watching the storm. The wind roared. The lightning slapped her open eyes with glare and darkness. Overhead in the kitchen, the clock, pathetically ignorant of the storm, struck 1. Where did I miss that? It seemed a long time before Pa's voice came down through the darkness. You may come up now, Caroline. The storm has passed west of us, between here and the Wessington Hills. Oh, Pa, it wasn't near enough to get Reverend Brown's, was it? Laura asked. No, I doubt if this house would have stood it had it come that near, Pa answered. Cramped and chilled from sitting so long uncomfortably in the cold cellar, they crawled wearily into their beds. It's a long chapter. All through August, the weather was hot, and there were many thunderstorms. Oh, isn't that lovely? Thank you. All through August, the weather was hot, and there were many thunderstorms. Several times, Ma roused Laura and Carrie in the night to go down cellar with her and Grace while Pa watched the storm clouds. The wind blew with terrific force, but it was always a straight wind, and the worst of it passed to the west. Frightened as she was in these terrifying nights, Laura felt strange delight in the wild strength of the wind, the terrible beauty of the lightning and the crashes of thunder. But in the morning, they were all tired and heavy-eyed. Pa said, It seems we have to have about so many electrical storms. If we don't get them in blizzards in winter, we'll get them in cyclones and thunderstorms in the summer. We can't do anything about it, so we must take them as they come, said Ma. Pa rose from the table and stretched as he yawned. Well, I can make up my sleep when cyclone season is over. Right now, I have to cut oats, and he went out to do his work. He was cutting the oats and wheat again with the old cradle. A harvester cost more money than he had, and he would not go into debt for one. Giving a mortgage on everything one owns to buy a $200 machine and paying 10% interest on the debt will ruin a man. That's how I feel about freeze dryers. I don't think I'd ever get the money out of them. Let these brash young fellows go into debt for machinery and break up all their land. I'm going to let the grass keep on growing and raise cattle. Since he had sold Ellen's big calf to send Mary to college, he had bought another cow. If Ellen's little calf had grown up, other calves had grown up until now he had 6 cows and heifers, besides this year's calves. So he needed a great deal of grass and hay. On the last Sunday in August, Almanzo, I would be nipping any calves that were born male. You just turn them into steer and raise them for beef. Why, with all those cows, he's still buying salt pork is beyond me. On the last Sunday in August, Almanzo came driving Barnum single. Barnum reared, but Laura was quick, and when his feet touched the ground again, she was safely in the buggy seat. When Barnum had almost reached town and had settled to a trot, Almanzo explained, I want to break him to drive single. He's so large and strong and such a good looker that he'll be worth more as a single driver than in a team. He must get over this way of starting, though. He is a beauty, Laura agreed. And I believe he's really gentle. Let me drive him. I'd like to see if I could. Almanzo seemed doubtful, but he gave her the lines. Keep a tight rein on him. Don't let him get the start of you. Laura had not realized before how very small her hands were. They looked and felt tiny holding those leather lines, but she was strong. She drove around the corner by the livery barn and all the way up Main Street, Barnum trotting as fast as he could. Did you see them turn and stare? Said Almanzo. They never expected to see a woman driving that horse. Laura saw nothing but Barnum. Across the railroad tracks and on, through Poverty Flat, the new part of town. Who would name a place Poverty Flat? Not a very enterprising name. The new part of town she drove, but her arms were growing tired, and a little way out of town she gave the lines back to Almanzo. When my arms are rested, I want to drive again, she told him. You may, he promised. You may drive all you want to. It gives my arms a rest too. The next time she took the lines, they felt alive. Through them, she got the feel of Barnum's mouth. A kind of thrill came up the lines to her hands. I do believe Barnum knows I'm driving, she exclaimed in surprise. Of course he does. He doesn't pull so hard either. Watch him. Almanzo took the lines, and once again they grew tauter and seemed almost to stretch. He leans on the bit with me, Almanzo said. Abruptly, he changed the subject. Do you know your old school teacher, Cluett, is going to start a singing school? Laura had not heard this. Almanzo said, I'd like to have you go with me if you will. I'd like to very much, she answered. All right, next Friday night I'll come for you at 7. Almanzo went on. He's got to learn to walk. He's never been known to walk yet when he was hitched up. Seems to think that if he can keep on going fast enough, he can get away from the buggy. Let me take him again, Laura said. She loved the feel of Barnum's mouth coming to her hands through the lines. It was true he did not pull so hard when she was driving him. He really is gentle, she said again, though she knew that he always had been a runaway. All that afternoon she took turns with Almanzo driving, and before he stopped to let her go out at home, he reminded her, Friday night at 7, I'll be driving Barnum single. He may act up, so be ready. My goodness, we're 2/3 the way through this book. I hope everybody enjoyed me reading this. I enjoy reading it from my chair. I hope you guys enjoy it from my chair as well. It is much more comfortable. My bottom is still very sore, but things are improving. But it takes me a while. I have a hard time sitting on the office chair for any length of time, and I have to work on my taxes tomorrow. So I love you guys. Take care. God bless. And we will see you soon for chapter 22, Singing School. Mwah. Thank you. God bless. Poke, poke.